Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. My name is Rob Evans, and I'm your transformation coach, health strategist, and internationally published author, helping take your life and your business, your health, fitness, mindset, and body from where you are right now to where it is that you want to be. And today I've got a spectacular guest all the way from Utah in the US. It's Devin Miller, and Devin runs his own attorney firm. It's called Miller IP Law. And he likes to work with startups, and I just thought a great opportunity to have a really good conversation, because certainly the way that he approaches his own business, and he obviously niches with startups, is different to what we see here in Australia with law. So he's just got a fascinating story. So Devin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So maybe by way of start, Devin, maybe just give us we could go so many different ways in the depth of your background, and from family perspective and academic and so forth. So maybe just give us a bit of a background about your story and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, and that can go anywhere from 1 minute to 5 hours. I don't know, 5 hours, but a while. So I'll try and keep it to the shorter.
Anything you name it. She got 4 kids, and
yeah. So maybe as a kind of a bit of a background or a little bit about myself. So I am a intellectual property attorney, as you mentioned. As far as education wise, I ended up getting 4 degrees, which my wife always jokes is 3 degrees too many. So I got a electrical engineering degree, Mandarin Chinese, MBA, which is a master's of business administration, and then the law degree. So it sounds like a lot, but basically what I always do is I figure, hey, if I'm in school and I'm having to study things, I might as well get as much bang for my buck. So I did dual degrees for undergraduate, and then dual degrees for graduate school. As you mentioned, I also have 4 kids. So I have a 12-year-old son, and then 3 daughters after that, that ranging from 10 to down to 7. And so I love my family, and that's a big part of my life. And then as far as, a little bit of the journey. So I went through undergraduate, graduated, decided, hey, I like engineering, but I don't want to be an engineer. So what do I want to do when I grow up? And I thought, hey, I like startups and small businesses. And that's why I went and got the MBA as well as the law degree. And I've really always kind of pursued both of those passions at the same time. So I've always done a full-time legal career. I've always been doing startups and small businesses as well. First startup I did was while I was in MBA school. I was doing the dual degree, the law degree and the MBA degree. Entered in a business competition with a few other people, started a wearables company, bought out the other people that were partners in the business competition. That one's still going today, and it's an 8-figure business, and I kind of take a bit of a less active role in, but still involved with that as well. So that's a really quick run through. But I'll pause there because I could go on forever.
I was going to say, where does the Mandarin fit in to that?
So Mandarin wasn't necessarily or by intent. It was, so I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also nicknamed LDS or Mormon. And so with that, I served a religious mission for my church in Taiwan for a couple of years. And so Taiwan speaks Mandarin Chinese. So I went and picked that up as I was serving my religious mission. And then as I came back, I said, hey, I already have a lot of the background and experience on the language side. Why don't I just add it on as a second degree as I go along? So that's kind of more, that one out of the 4 is the one where it was more of, hey, I already know the language, I might as well get a degree in it.
Yeah, excellent, fascinating, nicely encapsulated in a couple of minutes there. And I think I saw also you've got quite an interesting, like, deeper family history. I hope I got this right, but was it your family founded the town where you live? Is that
you
right?
did some good homework? Yeah. So so my family, so I live in a fairly small town. It's in Utah. It's kind of north of Salt Lake City here in the US. But it's when I was growing up, it was a couple thousand people there, 2,000 or 3,000, I'd guess. Okay. And so that one, I went back to generations. It was in the mid 1850s, somewhere in there, 1847, 1850. Okay. My family, or ancestors of my family moved into the valley, started it with a lumber mill and some of the other things, and then basically just the community slowly grew. It's still a big farming community, although it's turning into more of a ski place. But yeah, so I've been in the same. I live in the same place as I grew up. We moved back, my wife and I, and are raising our family there. But yeah, I've been there, I don't know, however many generations from about the 1850s till now, but certainly several generations. So it makes it fun.
Yeah, that's very unique, and I guess that's what also pulls you there, right? Because you want to continue that tradition, and there's like you've got deep roots there, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it makes it fun. I mean, so I grew up and I knew most of my cousins. I knew my uncles and my aunts and my grandparents and a lot of the, even second and third extension relatives. So it made it fun that you grew up, kind of knew a lot of people, related to them, and had that connection. And so, I liked the small town. I liked where it was located. And then I also liked the opportunity for my kids to know a lot of the same family members. So that's why we decided that we would continue the tradition.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I've got two daughters myself, and I live in Melbourne, Australia, but I'm about 75 kilometers southeast of it. So I can probably go for a drive for a minute, and there's cows and things like that. But I mean, we've got in my shire, there's about 123,000 people, so it's it's a reasonable size, but it's nice to be out in the more in the sticks than the tall buildings and so forth. So yeah, nice. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to go into the intellectual property side of law and set up on your own.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, I always, kind of two parts of the story, and I'll hit on the one, which is the question you asked. I always have both loved startups and small businesses. So just to rewind, when I was after I graduated with undergraduate, kind of had, the question of what do I do when I grow up? And I said, hey, I kind of find the law interesting and some of those aspects. And I also found that I like startups and small businesses. And so on the legal side, I said, hey, well, one of the paths that presents an opportunity to work with a lot of startups and small businesses and innovations and people coming up with really cool things is to do intellectual property. So a lot of times with patents and trademarks. And so the other thing with, at least here in the US, with to be a patent attorney, you have to have a technical undergraduate. So you have to have either an engineering degree, chemistry, biology,
right,
math sometimes, or physics and that. And so kind of worked well with the undergraduate degree I already had, and as well as a suit kind of with that, hey, I can work with a lot of the startups and small businesses that I would find interesting. So that's why I went to law school and did that. And so I came out of law school and I worked for a couple large law firms. And so I came back to Utah, was wanting to, migrate back. So I went to graduate school, law school and MBA school in Cleveland, Ohio, and then came back to Utah to be near family once I graduated school, and worked for some large law firms. Got some great experience, got some great training, and worked for name recognizable cool companies like Amazon and Intel and Red Hat and Ford and others. But I basically, after doing that for about 6 years, kind of took a step back and said, where do I want my career to go? Where do I see things heading? What are kind of the clients I like to work with? And it kind of always circle back to, I still like working with startups and small businesses. And when you're working in a large law firm, they tend to focus on large clients that have a large amount of business that they're bringing in and pay a lot of money. And so it just didn't necessarily fit with where I wanted to take my career long term. So that's why about 4 years ago, I decided to go out on my own, start my own law firm that really focused on helping startups and small businesses. And that's kind of where I've been building it ever since.
Yeah, great. And so I don't know, you can help me here, whether it's different to the way that the law happens in the US compared to here. But one of the things that stood out for me when you have a look at your website, and we'll give people the details of that at the end, you've got your DIY legal, whereas like if I see my lawyer, for instance, who just happens to be local as well, they don't have any DIY stuff. You pay them if you want a letter for something, then you pay them a fee for that. If it's, it's a will or something, there's no DIY will. It's just you do it all yourself. You do it all with a consultation and so forth with them, and then they do all the work, et cetera, et cetera. So you've obviously set yours up differently. Is that where you saw a niche and an opportunity, or is this fairly common with the way that this side of law happens in the US?
I don't know. I always hesitate to say whether it's been done or not, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, a lot of firms out there, but none that I'm aware of. And so, it's one where, as far as I'm aware, is at least a niche or much less frequently done. And I get why. In other words, it's kind of that conflict of attorneys are wanting you to come in and pay for attorneys' time because that's how they make their living. That's where the training is. That's where the money is. And I'm not disagreeing with them. And we still have attorneys. We still provide those services. But, kind of as I was building the firm, we have a lot of different clients, and some of them come in and they're well-funded startups, or they have savings, or they're able to afford it, or whatnot. But we'll also have clients that say, hey, I just can't afford this. This isn't within my budget. I'm doing this as a side hustle, or I'm just getting started and we don't have a lot of money, and you have to make the dollars stretch in that. And so, typically the law firms just kind of say, well, you don't have the money. Sorry, we can't help you. And they turn you away, and you can go figure out or try and do it yourself or do without type of a thing. And so rather than just simply go that direction, I said, hey, why don't we create a DIY tool that they can do? And it's not meant to replace an attorney. We never claim that it's going to be the same quality, same level as having an attorney do it. I think attorneys do a much better job, but it was one that was meant to give them that option where, hey, if you're looking to get something in place, you're wanting to get something started, you don't have the budget for attorney, rather than just leaving you to out on your own, let's do it, or let's give you a tool to do it. So it's one where it's at least reasonably unique. I'm sure that there's somebody out there that's also thought of it as well, but one that I haven't seen other firms do, just because they don't want to cut into their
Points out the dollars. Yeah, certainly unique. Maybe could you give us a bit of an indication, just so the listeners can hear the type of DIY stuff that you're talking about? You don't have to list them all, because I know you've got heaps of them, but maybe just to give people an idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so some of the ones that we do is that, like, in the US, you can do a provisional patent application, which is not a full patent application, but it's a 1-year placeholder application. So
you said sometimes called patent pending. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah.
Patent pending means you filed an application. A lot of times that's a way that somebody can get patent pending on a less expensive option than going for a full patent application. If you're to come in, and our flat fees, I think, are still pretty competitive, but if you're to say USD for a provisional patent application with us as attorneys drafting and doing it or for you is $2,300. If you're to do the DIY application, it's about $300. So it gives an option of, hey, I don't have $2,300. But what it does is it's set up, we just basically took and said, hey, what are the components or the keys or the things that we would be drafting, and then how can we best train someone? So it has videos interspersed throughout that kind of say, hey, for this section, here's how you do it. And then they'll fill that in, and then they'll go to the next section. They'll have a separate video for this section. Here's what it should be. Here's what you'd include. Here's how you go about doing it. And then after they go through and fill in each of those sections, watching the videos along the way, then the tool will take it, combine it into a reasonable draft of it, that we can then file on their behalf. And so attorneys don't review it. They don't, look over it, because otherwise you'd be hiring an attorney. But it kind of gives you that interactive, here's, me as an attorney talking about what you should be considering as you're doing it yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a really cool approach, because I think one of the things that probably scares people off when they're getting started is just all the costs that are associated with it before you even get to the legal side. But it's one of the first things that you should be getting right, because otherwise you're screwed later if you mess it up. So that really stood out to me when I was having a look through your website. So, that's really cool. And so with the startups, so what would you say you see as the biggest challenges for startups?
Oh, that's a hard question, just because there are multiple challenges. I mean, I think very early, I'll give you a few, because I don't know if I can say just one, but I'll give you a couple different thoughts. I mean, I think one of the things that people get in that they don't understand, probably with good reason, is how difficult startups are, in the sense that I think, you go watch the TV shows or the movies, go watch a Shark Tank, and it feels like it gives the impression that all you have to have is a good idea. If you have a good idea, then everything else will fall into place. And so people kind of have that misconception of, I'll have a great idea, and if I build it, they will come. And, the good idea is that while it's important, and I'm not minimizing it, it's a small portion to a much bigger puzzle, in the sense that once you have the idea, now you have to figure out, how do you build it? How do you fund it? How do you protect it? How do you market it? How do you get people to know about it? Do you price it? Who do you sell it to? And how do you sell it? And, and all those things. Where do you manufacture? How do you ship it? Is it a software? Is it a service? Is it a product? And all of those things play into it. And so I think people oftentimes, they get into it and then they get frustrated because they get into it a few weeks or a couple months, and it's not just taking off and going perfectly just like they thought they would on the TV or the movies, and then they do it. And so I think that is probably one of the things that people oftentimes, or is as big a killer as anything, is just people aren't really in it for the long haul. And I think it's more of, almost not necessarily that they're intending it to, but a get rich quick, where, hey, this will be a couple months work and I'll be a millionaire type of a thing.
Yes. So a lot of you just triggered a thought for me. A lot of legal people that I've got to know over the years, they're hopeless at business. They're good at what they do, but they're hopeless at business. They have absolutely no idea how to do marketing. If there's a room of 50 people, then they're men and accountants. I'm actually a chartered accountant when I started my career, and I've just moved it completely in a different direction. So have you found, like, personally for your business, have you found like that marketing side of growing? Because at some point you were a startup yourself, even though you're working for big firms, but then when you're starting building your own baby from scratch, what have you found some of the challenges? And being in a small town and maybe trying to, I'm assuming because your business, where you and I are talking now, you can work globally with people, but most of your clients are probably in the US, but all over. How did you see those challenges for you when you were starting your business?
Yeah, I mean, I took it as a stepwise approach. And so first thing, this is specific to me, it's going to be different in everybody's circumstance. But I said, hey, if my intent at some point, and I knew, I don't know, very at the beginning, but pretty early on, that I wanted to do my own firm at some point. But, to go out there and have basically zero experience. And yes, I know that law school helps to prepare you, but it doesn't really prepare you for the real world. And so I said, hey, if I'm going to be able to do this, I do need to be able to do the work well. That is a prerequisite to starting my own firm, or to be able to have successful. So that's why I went out and did it for 6 years. But that's also why I took the route of a couple of routes. One is I went and got the MBA, so I'd have kind of the business side of it, not just the legal side. And I think that, to your point, absolutely, my experience is 95, if I'm being generous, % of attorneys are great at legal stuff and horrible at business, because law school doesn't teach you how to do a business. They've never done a business. They only do the legal work. They don't know how to do marketing. They don't even know what SEO is. They don't know what sales is. They don't know how to do a website. And that's fine. If all you're going to focus on is just, hey, I'm going to work for a firm, I'm going to work for a big company that already has other people that deal with this and manage it, probably don't need to know all that. Yeah. Other than, I think that if you're working with businesses, you should probably understand what they're going through. But for me, at least, it was, okay, I'm going out to get the experience. But at the same time, I started all the way back in MBA school, and some have done very well, and some have done or not as well, of doing startups and small businesses along the way. So even when I was working for a big firm, I'd built several websites. I had done a product that was gone through manufacturing, gone out, got investors. I had gone through all those things, because I wanted to pursue those startups and small businesses myself on the side. And so by the time I got to where I was starting my own firm, I had at least had had experience and got some of that background along the way, which worked well for me. So it didn't really feel like I was jumping out to the unknown, knowing nothing, and doing, starting from absolute scratch. But rather I was saying, hey, I still have plenty to learn, and there was still a lot to figure out, but I kind of had that foundation. And so that's kind of how I got started on doing the firm myself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like that story. Obviously we're going through a bit of a global turmoil at the moment. There's so much uncertainty everywhere, I think. Like COVID here, I was like in Melbourne, we were the most locked down city in the world. It was ridiculous. And we're open now, but they're talking about some rules coming back in and so forth. Obviously, you being in a smaller country, well, I say smaller country town, there's a few thousand population. It's probably COVID hit you differently there. But I'm just wondering, with your business and what you're seeing, the impact of COVID, coming out of COVID the last I suppose, 12 months of uncertainty and so forth. How's that hitting your business? So the good things, bad things.
Yeah, I would say it's mostly been good for us. And, would not wish that we ever have to go through it again, but in the sense that one of the things well before COVID ever hit, but when I started the firm, if I'm going to focus on startups and small businesses, there's only so many startups and small businesses in my local area. But the nice thing is that with intellectual property, at least again in the US, it's on a federal level, which means as opposed to a lot of attorneys that you have to do state by state and you can only work within your state. If it's on the federal level, I can work with any businesses or in any of the 50 states. And so I set it up that we were doing Zoom and doing remote meetings well before it was cool. So I would, most of my clients are more outside of Utah than inside of Utah. So we had it set up that, with the systems that we put in place, a lot of it is online forums. It has videos interspersed throughout. They can schedule. I mean, it takes 10 seconds to grab time on my schedule for a Zoom meeting. So don't even it's easier to grab some time with me and jump on. You can jump on in 5 minutes as opposed to having to drive into our offices, which you're welcome to, but a lot of people aren't located nearby. And so with all of that said, we were actually well positioned that as COVID started to lock things down, as people weren't able to go in the office, it almost opened it up for us in the sense that people are now saying, well, do I really need to drive into my attorney's office, even if they're just down the street? Do I need to go in and see them in person? And if not, because I'm locked down or I can't go in and see them in person anyway, then why am I limiting myself to only doing the law firms that are in the big high rises that are expensive, that are down the street, as opposed to someone that is as good or better and has the experience that I'm going to be doing it remotely either way. And so that one was kind of where we'd positioned ourselves to work remotely, to work with clients across the country as people were changing the way that they go about doing it. It actually opened up additional work for us. Now, a lot of other startups and small businesses got impacted differently. And especially if you're having a physical location or stores, or you're doing it in-person sales, you had to figure it out. But for us, it was actually a lot of the way that we'd set it up. It didn't change a lot for us, other than it opened up additional people that may not have considered us beforehand.
I would echo your first statement about, you wouldn't want people to have to go through it all again, but I'm glad that it had a great impact on me personally in terms of my mindset how many unique opportunities do we get in our life? Hopefully not many like what we've just gone through, to really test yourself. And I think about all my parents and grandparents have passed on now, but I think about, my grandparents would have had to go through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, all of these sorts of things. And, we've got people that are saying that Uber Eats are late and, they're like, they don't have food. So it's completely different. So I thought it was a really unique opportunity to really test your the mental toughness. And this show actually was born out of COVID. But if I often ask people, if you had the choice of, going left turn, going through COVID, again, knowing what you know now, right turn, no, I'm just going to keep going the path that I was on, I'd always take the left turn. I'd go through it.
I think you hit on something, just to interject just a bit, which is, at least from my perspective, anytime there's a change in the marketplace, it presents an opportunity. So, a lot of times when things are status quo, when things are comfortable and everybody's going along, there isn't a motivation, there isn't a reason to change, and there isn't as many opportunities because everybody's used to what they're doing. And when there's a change in the marketplace, even if it's painful and hurtful and, and presents issues and challenges, the people that are able to figure out how to adapt to it, how to adjust to it, and otherwise make it or turn it into an opportunity, oftentimes I think find that greater success. And so, I like it. While it's not fun and it's a lot of times painful, I think if you're worth putting in the time to figure it out, it can present a lot of opportunities.
So given that you were already, set up the way that you were, personally, did you find that, wow, I don't know what's going to happen here? Or was it just like, oh, well, no, it's just a further extension of what I'm doing. It just means that people maybe accept more that we can do a Zoom hookup now?
Probably both. So, I mean, in the sense, I don't know that it significantly impacted the way that we did business, but we also said, hey, this is an opportunity for us to further help people, to educate and to reach out to them. So how we were making connections, how we were getting introductions, how we did some of our marketing, outreach, and online stuff, and explaining things, that was adjusted or pivoted. So in the sense that day to day, did it change how we conducted business, how we did things? Not really. We were about the same, but how we utilize that in the marketplace, or certainly, or had it, we adjusted it to take advantage of it.
Yeah, nice. It definitely had an impact for me. I shifted my thinking to more globally, and why, like, why would anyone want to work with me on Zoom kind of thing? And that's like, well, now we're forced to, and hang on, why don't we do this and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was quite a cool experience for me, for my mindset anyway, and the kids. It was quite unique. I got to learn a lot about my kids and their schooling and all that kind of stuff during that time. So with the startups, what would you say is the most frustrating thing that you find in dealing with startups?
Ooh, frustrating. Oh, that's, I'll give it to you. It's a bit of a conflict with what I'd said as far as the DIY tool, which but I'll explain that. But I think that one of the things that I think people have gotten to the point is that the internet has made us feel like we're a lot smarter than we actually are.
Yeah.
In the sense that when you go through it, if I have a question pop up, I can go ask Google, or now it's Chat GPT or whatever, and I just can ask it, and it'll give me the question. I feel like I'm as expert, and I don't really need to ask anybody else, or the people that are experienced and expertise in those fields. And so, I'll go watch the YouTube video, I'll go read the article online, and people have gotten to the point where they're making a lot of mistakes that they otherwise wouldn't have, because they think that they're an expert in all areas. And so I think that, not saying you shouldn't use a DIY tool or you don't have to adjust your budget, but you also need to realize that when there are things that you don't know, rather than just trying to go and Google it or wing it or figure it out, sometimes it is worthwhile to invest in those experts. And I think that there is absolutely a balance there, because if you don't have the money, you can't afford the experts, you have to figure it out to a degree. But a lot of times people keep that mentality way too long into their business. In other words, there's a difference when you're first starting out, you don't have the budget, you have to figure it out to get it going, versus, hey, now we have revenue, or we're starting to see some success, we're starting to do it. You should go back and mop those things up, or make them, improve them, and make them better. And oftentimes people just kind of forget about them and overlook, and then it creates a lot of issues for the startups as they start to mature.
One of the things that certainly happens here in Australia, I think the average life of most businesses is about 18 months, six months to 18 months, because like being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, it's hard. And I used to think I knew what hard work was. And, on the other side of, the business, and I was like working a corporate job, and, I was one of the executives there, and I think, oh no, I know it's going to be hard. I've never run a business before. But then when you're in it, and you're like up to here, you're like, oh, this is what hard looks like.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not even first of all, I think you put in a lot more hours, but let's say even keep the number of hours the same. You went from doing a corporate business to where you have one job you specialize on and you have to do well, to you are now the HR department, you're hiring and firing, you're marketing and sales, you're the janitor, you're the boss, you're the person that makes payroll, you're the person that does taxes. And for that same amount of hours, you have a lot more stresses and a lot more things. Plus, you're typically working a lot more hours. But even putting that aside, you are just having a lot more. So it is a much different degree of hard. But almost to your point, I think there are a lot of people that, it's interesting. I love LinkedIn, and I'm on there all the time. And people so oftentimes feel like the employers don't ever. Why do the employers make more than the employees? And it's like, well, one, they go out and take a huge risk and going out on their own. They may not be success. They're usually putting their own time, money, and effort in. They're going through a lot more stress. They're putting in a lot more hours. And I think that oftentimes isn't realized until you actually go through it yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can be such a lonely, isolating journey that nobody else really gets unless they're an entrepreneur as well, and somebody that's a successful one. You get two broke businesses talking about it, and they're all experts and whatever, but hang on, you're still broke. You got to talk to more successful businesses. So the podcast is something that you also started up for yourself, and so tell us a little bit about what that's called, why you started doing that, what's your passion there.
Yeah, I have way too many passions, but with the podcast, So I'm the host and started the inventive journey. We started it two and a half years ago. I think we're already up to over 400 episodes, so we do it pretty frequently. And it is really focused on telling the journey of how founders, co-founders, owners of startups and small businesses, how they got to where they're at today. And now we go all the way back to the high school, college time frame, because a lot of times what people want to do is they just want to jump into the thing that they're doing today, that they're finally successful, and we only focus on the success and none of the rest of the journey. And it gives a false sense, because now everybody hears, oh, well, they just did it. They started their business. The next day they were making lots of money, and they do it. And you miss it 20 years before that, where they had to figure out each of the skills along the way. They built up a book of business. They figured out what not to do. They had 3 businesses that failed beforehand, and you never hear any of that, because everybody wants to jump over and just focus on success. So podcast is called The Inventive Journey, and it is to focus on that journey of how everybody got to where they're at today, the whole journey.
Yeah, beautiful. It's really powerful, isn't it? Because you hear about people's successes, and that people use that throwaway term overnight success, and those people say, yeah, I was overnight success, it just took me 13 years or whatever of hard work to get to this point. And people don't, again, like I said before about, oh, this is what hard work means. That 10,000 hour rule and all that sort of stuff. I mean, once you're in it, like I've been running my own business 13 years now, and I have become such a better person because of growing through all the pain that you go through, and the mistakes that you make. And I love the fact of like building the relationships, like we're doing here. I've got to meet you through a mutual contact that we've had, and you just never know what's going to happen in a day. Sometimes it's like, okay, who am I going to meet today? I find that really fascinating. So last question I've got 2 more questions for you, actually, but so second last one, what's next for you in terms of your business, what you're looking to achieve over this next 2023?
Oh, that's a short question. It's a lot longer answer, but I'll try. So as far, I'll answer it 2 ways. As far as the law firm, it's really just we're rolling out programs, we're expanding it, we're trying to always innovate and figure out new ways. We have, isn't you mentioned one of them, the DIY legal product. We have a few other things that we're coming out with today. This week we're also looking at how to leverage some of the remote attorneys working remotely, and to be able to reduce costs for our clients. That by having a much more diverse thing of where attorneys working and allow them to work from home. So law firm is probably continuing to expand and grow, do the podcast, do the new clients, roll out some new programs, and have a fun time. Alongside of that, I'm probably the perpetual entrepreneur that always has 20 new ideas, but a couple of the fun things that I am doing outside of the law firm. One is just for kind of fun, for personal enjoyment, starting a food truck with my kids. And so it's a hot chocolate It's a hot chocolate food truck. It's for gourmet, where you build your own hot chocolate. And really, my motivation there is less on the financial. I still want it to be successful and make money, but I wanted it to be an opportunity that I can work with my kids, that they can start to get some of the business opportunities, learn at a much younger age. How do you run a business? How do you work with clients? How do you actually make something and produce it and work hard? Because I think that's a lot of times missing for a lot of youth. And so I want to make sure my kids have that experience. So I'm actually starting, that's going to be launching either next week or the week after, but I'm doing that with my kids. The other one that I'm doing, which again is not the law firm, it started with the law firm and now it's branched out to its own business, is a lead generation tool. So we are heavy into lead generation, finding new customers and clients. We found out what I think is a really cool and unique and different way than what most other people are doing it. We've been doing it internally for about 2 years. We finally decided, hey, this is something that we could probably expand out, and a lot of other industries could use it. So we're actually in beta testing with that right now, rolling that out, and going to be doing that in here in another month or so.
Yeah, nice. And now I've just thought of 2 more questions. So with the number of episodes, I believe the stats are something like only 10% of people that start a podcast get beyond 100 episodes. So, kudos to you. I think I'm up to about 2,400 episodes myself now.
Hands down to you. You beat me, no question.
I do 3 different podcasts, and I'm about to start a fourth one. Why would you say people should get into podcasting? What's the benefits that you see of podcasting?
Yeah, I think it's a good way to make connections and make introductions. And so you have kind of two things. One is it's the people you're actually talking to with guests are a great way to expand your network and find new people. And then also the audience that you build as far as listening to you, because they get an introduction to you each time they listen to an episode. Is who are you? They get to know you. You're almost their friend. They feel like, even if they've never talked to you, they feel like what they know with you for a while. So, and it's also a way that you're not having to go out and do cold calls and cold emails and hard pitches, because it's a much more, hey, we're offering value. I'm offering value to the guests on the podcast. I'm offering value to the people that are listening. They're not having to pay for it. I'm expanding my network. So it's really a kind of an easier way to make connections and expand your network and find new people without having to just try and go out and hard or cold sell them.
I think that would be my number one reason for doing it as well. I mean, it gives you obviously a platform to be able to, invite guests and, get out your thoughts and so forth. Often I find it's almost a silent counseling tool to just get out what's in your head, to get it out there to the audience, because I do a combination of, I have obviously guests on the show, but versus most of the time, because I'm doing it every day, most of the time it's just me talking, and it's usually not video either. It'll just be the sound, because most people aren't, generally watching, and they're driving and listening and whatever. But yeah, I've made some of the best connections, and globally, because of, you're like, oh wow, gee, Devin's really interesting. I'd like to get to know him. It's like we're not in the schoolyard and can't say, hey, can we play together? Can we be friends? It's like, hey, look, I do this podcast. I'd love to get you on the show, etc. Like prior to this, I mean, we had like a 10-minute conversation like a week or so ago, and just connecting and doing this now. As you're talking, I'm listening and thinking, okay, so who can I connect you to add some value to you? And I know I'm appearing on your show, I think next week, and you've given me some people to potentially connect with as well. And it just sort of grows from there. And I love that about this podcasting community and the guests and how we do that. The final question was going to be about coaching and your perspective on getting a coach to improve you and your business, etc.
Yeah, I have a mixed perspective on coaching as far as whether or not it's valuable, in the sense that there's a lot of people that are out there that are saying that they're coaches, and there's a lot of snake oil salesmen, and there's some good ones. And it's very hard to distinguish, especially if you've done it for a while. If you've used coaches before, maybe you're able to, but if you're just getting into it, they can be beneficial. They can give you guidance. They can help you along your business, or they can just be a drain on the cash, and they can be a very expensive lesson that you should never do it again. And so I think that if you can find the right coaches that can give you the right direction, that help you to overlook or jump ahead of some of the mistakes you would have otherwise made. Sometimes, if nothing else, they just are a listening ear that you can complain to and bounce some ideas off of. Absolutely valuable. You just have to make sure you find the right coach, and you don't find the people that are just, hey, I went through a 6-week course online. I spent a few hours. I'm calling myself a certified coach, and they don't offer any value. So I think coaches are good if you can find the right one.
Yeah, really great point. I think the problem we live in, with social media and everything, everybody's a millionaire now. Everybody's a coach in something. Everybody's great. And even like you read some of the testimonials that people have, and you say, that sounds fake. I mean, because you're in business and whatever. And it's like, come on, that's fake. You can just tell. So yeah, really good point. Hey, this has been a really great conversation, Devin. Loved it. So tell us how people can get in touch with you. If you've got I think you do a free consult or something on your website. So if there's something you'd like to offer the audience, we'll put it below in the links here. But tell us how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So best way I'll give you a few ways to get in touch with me. If you want to talk about the legal side, whether it's, patents, trademarks in the US, we also do a lot of stuff abroad, have a lot of great connections and referrals and everything. Just go to strategymeeting.com. That links right to my calendar. It's an easy way to connect up with me. One other way to connect up with me is, I'm not overly active. We have accounts, but me personally am most active on LinkedIn. It's probably the social media network I like the best. So if they want to connect up with me on LinkedIn, they can just go to meetmiller.com. That directs you to my LinkedIn profile. You're welcome to connect up with me there as well. So strategymeeting.com if you're wanting to grab a 15-minute free consultation, or you can connect up with me on LinkedIn by going to meetmiller.com.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, can you only do obviously we can podcast anywhere around the world, but like in the business side of things, can you only do stuff in the US?
It depends on what it is. So trademarks, we're able to do quite a bit around the world. Patents, we still work with a lot of clients. We just have to have local counsel in each of those countries. So we have clients in anywhere from Japan, Europe. We have some in Australia, some in New Zealand, and it's just a matter of, depending on what they're needing, we can either help them directly, or we just also will utilize some local counsel.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Terrific. That's awesome. So thanks so much for sharing, about your story, your approach to law and your business, and your passion with startups and everything. It's really, really fascinating. I'm sure we could talk for hours. Might have to get you on the show for another juicy topic at some point. Maybe we get controversial somewhere along the way.
Hey, you're talking to a lawyer. I love debates and controversies. So definitely happy to come on whenever you'd like.
I don't know what the what the feeling is in your view of this is given that you live in the States and you practice in this area, but certainly from Australia, we're a bit more laid back. But the view of the US, it's so litigious in the US. Everybody will sue everybody over anything, kind of thing. It's a little bit different here. Hopefully it doesn't get as bad as that in the US, but it's often
that would be a fun conversation. Definitely would be a good I'd agree with you on some points, and on other points probably not so much. So it definitely would be a fun discussion sometime.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Devin. We'll talk again.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on.